I just went to a comic show where every comic was $1. Did I pick up anything good? You're damn right I did. Stay tuned to find out what I picked up. Hey there, comic book fans. It's Rusty again with Collector Auctions. And yes, I went to a comic show where every comic there was $1 or less. It was a great show. It was a lot of dollar bin diving. You could find all kinds of things there. And if you guys have not watched my previous episode where I talked about trying to start a comic business with $25, well, it started at this show. In fact, that show right there, that episode that aired right before this one, the first 25 books that I showed on that channel were 25 books that I picked up at this show right here. So you've got to go back and watch that original episode and see the 25 books that I pulled out that I felt were worth maybe sending into the CGC and being able to start a comic book resale business with those books. And honestly, that was part of the purpose of going to the show. I really had intended to go to the show, spend $25, find 25 really good books, and let's have an episode. Let's have a challenge to see if I could find books that were worth getting graded, hopefully get those 9.8s or high grades on certain books, and see how much profit I could possibly make on a dollar show like this. Well, what happened was I got a little derailed because I ended up finding a lot more books than the 25 that I intended to only get. In fact, I found things that were good for some of the runs I'm working on, and even some of those turned out to be actually pretty valuable, while some of the other ones that I thought were going to be valuable, especially, as I said, get them graded, get those 9.8s, they weren't worth it. And I had to pull them from last week's show. Well, today what we're going to do is we're going to follow up and we're going to go through all the other comics that I picked up for $1 a piece. And we'll talk about some of the ones that I felt like were very undervalued. In fact, I was shocked of how inexpensive some of the 9.8s are on some of these books. I thought they'd be worth buying for $1 and being able to turn around, get them graded again. CGC 9.8s. But I'm telling you, it's not even worth it on some of these. It was shockingly how low you can buy some of these already pre-graded comics like that. But before I get started here, definitely hit that like, slap the subscribe, and click on that notification bell, guys, so you don't miss out on any of the content that I put out Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 3 p.m. All right, guys, let's get right into this. I'm not going to try to spend too much time on all the books, except for the ones that we talked about where I was thinking that they're going to be a little bit more valuable once you get them graded, but they weren't. I will stop and talk about some of those. In fact, we'll just start with that batch first, and then we'll talk about some of the other books that were in the runs. So I picked up a copy of Heroes Reborn #1. This is the Mark Bagley variant with Mephisto. This is a great cover. This is one of those trading card covers from Mark Bagley. And I thought that this one actually did pretty good. I didn't include it in last week's show, but this one right here, 9.8 on something like that, is around that $80 to $90 value. I could have included it if I had included some other books. And there will be some more in here, like this here. I did include the other copy of Savage Dragon #1. This is the second series. This was a surprising book that was only worth about $65. I shouldn't say surprising. I don't know what it is. Savage Dragon is still an ongoing series since the very beginning there, and it really does not have any value whatsoever, including these #1s. Both #1s, neither one of them have a lot of value. But the condition's really good on this, and the dealer I picked it up from, I mean, you can tell just how many copies of things that these dealers have been holding onto for 30 years. The stack of Savage Dragon #1s was immense. I mean, it must have been about 4 to 5 inches of nothing but #1s. And I tried to pick out a couple really good copies. I did pick up this Black Widow #1 from Marvel Knights. Of course, you've got the new Black Widow on the cover there. This is not that series that really introduced her. I know she was introduced in the Inhumans issue, but the other Black Widow series with J.G. Jones doing the artwork was the real series. I felt like it was really the key for the new Black Widow, but this was the new Black Widow series from Marvel Knights. No value whatsoever. 9.8, don't bother doing that. But still a pretty good book to have. A Black Widow character, especially Natasha, has always been one of my favorite characters, so I don't mind having that. In fact, most of these, even the ones that aren't valuable graded, they're still good books to have in your PC. So, and there's things in here like this right here. It's like, I remember hearing about this. Roar and Rick's Rare Bit Fiends. In the back of my mind, I'm going, where did I ever heard of that? But for $1, I don't mind taking a flyer on a obscure book like this and to see what kind, go home, look it up, see what kind of grade, if there is any kind of niche market for a 9.8 getting graded something like this. Well, there isn't. So it's a dollar book in my collection now. This one I thought might have a little bit more value because it is a sketch cover variant to Fantastic Four number 13. It is not a key book from that series, but it is one of the sketch cover variants. I thought that might be a little bit lower of a number quantity of books put out by that with the sketch cover there, but not really, not worth it. It didn't make the show, wasn't worth getting graded. This right here was on the cusp of possibly getting into the show, but didn't quite make it. This is Fantastic Four. What is this? 387? Yep, 387. It's got that really cool die cover there. If you open it up, you'll see there's a die cut around the Invisible Woman right there. Or in this point, maybe the Invisible Girl. She hadn't changed her name at that point. But great book. In fact, I've got a copy of that signed by Tom DeFalco, who wrote it, and Paul Ryan, who did the artwork for that. When I see number ones, even though it's not something I didn't think would be that popular, I went ahead and picked it up. If it was in really good condition, which this issue is, this is Black Hawk number 1. Imagine this was an ongoing series, but by people I don't even know. And turns out, yeah, no value whatsoever. I mean, these are kind of the books that you have to get 9.8s on to have any shot at a value. And in a lot of cases here, the 9.8s are not even worth sending in. You're spending more money on grading and shipping than you are what you could get for somebody who would want this. And honestly, that's the part of this that people have got to understand is just because a book's a 9.8 doesn't make it desirable. The book still has to be desirable on its own. And maybe a book like this just is not very desirable. But I thought that the other Black Hawk by Howard Chaykin, this was a 3-issue miniseries that he put out. I thought that this actually might have some really good value. I mean, it's a square bound, a little bit harder to get that 9.8. And again, here's a book that I really liked as a kid. I thought it was back during college when it came out. It was right after Chaykin had been working on, in fact, he probably still was working on American Flag. He had done the Shadow for DC Comics, which was one of my favorite series. When he did the artwork on that was fantastic. It was very influential to me, including the Black Flag artwork as well. When I was in college, his artwork was, I was a art major, and I kind of looked at people like Howard Chaykin and Bill Sienkiewicz and Steve Rudes, a lot of those kind of artists back in the day for inspiration, and really did enjoy this artwork, but this is a book that nobody wants. So not getting this graded either. All right, let's continue here. I did pick this up. It is the Virgin cover by Jay Lee for Grimm number 1. And this is actually a book that I already have signed by Jay Lee. He signed that for me earlier this year, but no value whatsoever. I mean, this is not worth $1 practically, but I thought maybe getting another one signed. I'm not sure if he's going to be a Baltimore Comic-Con this year or not, but I may take that to get another copy signed. We'll see. And that kind of leads into something here. A lot of these books, whether they're for the PC or not, part of it was some of them I bought for the purpose of projects, like getting books signed at cons and working on projects where I can get multiple people to sign. This is no exception right here. Avengers versus X-Men number 0 by Brian Michael Bendis. I don't know. He made it to Baltimore last year, so my guess is he probably won't be there for a while. But Frank Cho, though, will, and he did the cover to this, and he may have done some of the artwork inside. I'm not really sure, but this is a beautiful is that? I'm not sure. Is the redhead Rachel Summers? I cannot remember from the series, but the Scarlet Witch is pretty recognizable. Maybe this is Hope Summers. I think that's who that is. But beautiful, beautiful Frank Cho artwork. I may have to take this to Baltimore Comic Con because he is local Maryland. He's definitely going to be at the Baltimore Comic Con. Now, books that I was still continuing to think that they had some value because they did a year ago. And maybe the Spider-Woman, or excuse me, Madam Web movie kind of killed this character. But I did pick up issue number 1 of Arana, The Heart of the Spider. Now, this book had some value a year ago. And while at this dollar show, I didn't spend time on Key Collector and Go Collect to see if they're going to be worth it. For $1, I'll pick these up. And I know at one point that this was a decent 9.8, north of $100 9.8. Well, it's not even close to that. I mean, you're lucky probably to be $40 for a 9.8 these days. But it didn't stop me because I didn't know yet that. So I picked up 2 more really good copies of that right there. At one point, I had graded this, sold it for a pretty good price a couple years ago. Jim Lee's Wildcats number 1 right there. Again, I'm going on past history. What did I sell it for? I mean, I know it was it was at least $100 I sold this for. You'd be lucky to get $60 for a 9.8 on this right here if you're lucky enough to get that. This book was overproduced and it's not that desirable anymore. So, have a new really good copy of Wildcats number 1. Now, I did pick this up, and I did basically because I think the condition was really good, although there's a lot of tanning and foxing on the back. But Betty and Veronica, number 191, the front actually looks really good. This spine is spine tick free. You can see a little wear over on this edge, and you can see some foxing on the cover as well if you look close. You can really see it on the back when you've got the white cover. But for $1, I don't mind picking up a Betty and Veronica book, even though it's not one of those risque covers or anything like that. Now, if you watched my last video, I went to a dealer and he was selling a lot of Marvel Age preview issues from Marvel Comics. Now, these books came out in the 80s. I may have even gone into the 90s. I'm not sure. But some of those books in my last episode where I did pull out that are worth getting graded, there I did buy a few more just on the off chance that maybe there's some hidden gems in there. And that's what I did here. I got issue number 57. And you've got the cool lineup of all of the alternate new versions of some of their characters. You've got Thor, Captain America, the Gray Hulk, the red and white Iron Man. You've got the black suit Spider-Man. No value whatsoever. Don't get this graded. The same with the new universe right here. The new universe. This is the second time around. Not sure who did the cover there. It kind of reminds me a little bit of John Byrne, but I think it's mostly the inking on there. I wonder if it's Tom Palmer. I don't know. But this is issue, 59? Another Marvel Age. It's nice. It's a nice book. Fine to have it in the PC. High grade, but not worth getting graded. Now, I did take a flyer on this, even though the first issue, there's two issues to it. Even though it does have some spine ticks on there, I had this on my PC at one point. In fact, I probably still do from back in the 80s. But it is called The Uncensored Mouse. And it's these black covers right there. That's issue 1 and issue number 2. And these were, I want to say they're unauthorized use of some of the Mickey Mouse comic strips from back in the day, back in the 30s or 40s maybe. There was something like that. It's been a long time. I remember getting this back in the 80s, but I don't remember if that's exactly what was done on that. Let's read the front cover here and let's see what it says. A classic collection of uncensored Floyd Gottfredson comic strips from the 1930s. So this must have been, they didn't have the rights to use the Disney characters. I think that's what this was. But I thought, why not take a chance on that? Get both copies. The second issue is actually pretty decent. The first one has some ticks on it, but it would be interesting to look that up and see if there's any value getting graded. The answer is no. No, it wasn't. But I've got them back into PC. Now, this is one of the Marvel Age early ones that I thought might have some value because you've got this really cool Wolverine cover, and you've got Sprite. I guess that's what she was going by then, Kitty Pryde. Yeah, it is Al Milgrom art, but absolutely no value whatsoever. I thought maybe this might, and I picked up 3 copies of it. It is Sabretooth #1, and they had a whole batch of these, and I picked up 3 really good copies of this, and didn't make the list. You know, I spent $3, but it's not going to be worth getting graded. These are, honestly, a lot of these books may end up going onto my eBay store, and I would just part with them, and anybody who wants them can have them at that point. Now, we're getting to the part of the show where some of the first books that I picked up from the first dealer, I thought that these books right here, and it is a batch of them, I thought these were the ones that were going to be part of that show last week. Get them graded, get those 9.8s, flip them for $100 or whatever. I didn't think it'd be much more than that, but I was shocked. And look at this. I picked up a batch of Batman, the 3 Jokers. And I've got multiple covers here. Let's see what we got here. Well, let's go through them. We got, I don't even know which letters they are at this point. I wrote them all down. But here it is. We'll go through them. It's book number 3. You've got book number 2. Another book number 2. There are so many covers to these. I mean, the artwork's fantastic. The story is really good. But, I mean, the value on these, I was shocked. There's issue number 1. You've got the fish head, smiling fish head. This is really cool. We've got the Red Hood coming off after he went into the vat of chemicals. You've got the Dynamite one right there. Those are all issue number 1s. And then I did pick up this one. This was with a shark, smiling shark. This is actually a second print of issue number 1. I thought for sure these books looked fantastic. And honestly, they're great pickups for $1. But not for 9.8s. Unbelievable. You can pick up any of these for anywhere from $38 to $55 for a 9.8. Guys, if you want a 9.8 copy of any of these, go to eBay and buy it. I'm sure people will give you a deal. They'll give you make a best offer. I'm sure that they would give you that just to get rid of it because the things aren't moving. Prices just keep dropping. It's unbelievable that these are just sitting there. And I thought for sure every one of these would end up going into the CGC at some point. The answer is not at all. Not at all. I probably will keep a couple that I want for the PC some of the ones I don't have, but I'll probably put these on. I mean, I could sell these for $5 a piece on eBay. I'm sure that would be a pretty decent price on there, but I can't get these graded. I mean, you wouldn't make any money at that point. I mean, yeah, $1, and then for me it'd be $20 for each one of these to get graded, and assuming you do get that 9.8, I mean, you're not making any money at that point. By the time you're doing, you count in your shipping and your eBay fees and things like that. So it was very shocking. But let's just continue here because it was kind of surprising because I did pick up these books with that intent of looking at, let's find some surprising values. Now, the books in the last episode, there were definitely some ones in there that shocked me of how much how much some of those have been sold for recently and how much some of them are going for recently and still on eBay. But these batches right here, none of them made that cut. Savage Dragon #1. Here's another Frank Cho book right there that will have to go in. Didn't make the cut for the 9.8 grading, but this is a book that I may take in to get signed. I did have some Infinity Ink books that I picked up only because I've had recently started to be more interested in picking up JSA books, All-Star Squadron books, and once you get into that, All-Star Squadron books, then it kind of leads into Infinity Ink, and I picked up a whole batch of those. Some of those actually made the list, and that was surprising last week. Some of them were, one of them was even up to about $200 9.8. That shocked me. This one didn't, however. It's issue number 35, even though this, like the other ones, all do have Todd McFarlane artwork. Here's another Marvel Age that did not make the list. It's a really cool cover of Archie Goodwin. Did not make the list at all. Now, one of my favorite things to always pick up, and I'll pick these up. In fact, I almost picked up another set from another dealer. He just didn't have the complete set. It is the 5-issue storyline from Doug Minch and Paul Gulacy from Batman, The Legends of the Dark Knight. The storyline is called Prey. It recounts the first story, the first meeting of Batman and Hugo Strange. It's a completely new story, but it kind of recounts that first meeting. And what a fantastic story. And every time I find these, that's issue number 11. I want to say this is issue. I'm going backwards here. Let's do them in order. Issue number 12. Issue number 13. Here we go with 14 and issue number 15. Every time I find these in really good condition, I always pick them up. I don't know why. I think it's one of those things where I just cannot stop myself from buying this. The story is so good. And if you guys have never read Prey, it is one of the best Batman stories I've ever read. In fact, I've advocated for Matt Reeves, who's directing the new Batman films, to go find a story. Do the story. Don't alter it much. There is your movie if you really want a really good movie. Fantastic stuff, guys. All right, so one of the last dealers I went to is a local store, Universal Comics, that I've been recommended to go to here in the Baltimore area, but I have not made it. But they had a couple of things, and I picked up. What's funny is I had just picked this up recently at one of the other comic book shows for, I mean, I'm sure I paid $5 to $6, but Invaders number 28. I was actually able to work a little bit more on the Invaders run. Even though I did pick this up, I actually think this is a better copy than the one that I picked up for $5 or $6. But for $1, that's fantastic. Now, again, when I see really cool covers, things that weren't on my radar ever, and I recognize the art, or the artist, I should say, I'm curious to see if there is any hidden value in there. And if not, I've got some really good books right here by one of my favorite artists that I've already mentioned. But we've got Girl Scouts Magic Socks. It's GRRL Scouts. And this artwork, and there's issue number 2 and number 2 variant. And both of the artworks on this, these are both by Bill Sienkiewicz. Now, I think he just did the covers, but these are really fantastic. There are some there's a 9.8 of this one out there, I think, for $100, but then I also saw another 9.8 for like $40, and it's not selling, but it is some really cool Bill Sienkiewicz artwork. Now, for some reason, I'm going back, and when I see these now, I kind of pick them up. Amazing Heroes. This is a really thick Amazing Heroes. This thing must be look at that. It is a ½ inch thick. It is I believe it's the 1988 preview to all the comic books for the year. And you go through this, and it goes through every title and talks about it and some of the things that are coming up. This is issue number 133. It was a little hard. I remember this dealer. I picked this book up and one other, and you know that smell from old comics. A lot of us really like that old comic smell. Well, there's also that old musty bag comic smell that's not that appealing. And that's what this dealer, all of his comics had that smell to them. And it was a little hard to look through some of the yellowing bags on this. And I took a chance on this that this might actually be a little bit better grade than it does. It does have some color rub on it and everything. But no matter, at this point, I'm not even going to think about getting this graded. I'm going to sit down, and I've actually gone back and started rereading some of the big titles. I was reading Usagi Jimbo from 1988, what Stan Sakai was planning on that. So this will be good to go back and read some of the big books were back from that time period. Now here's a book that I thought might have some hidden value, considering it is a sketch cover variant to issue number 1 of Villains United, one of my all-time favorite little miniseries from DC Comics. In fact, Villains United led into the Secret Six series, and I believe it was Gail Simone, right? Yeah, Gail Simone was writing this with Dale Eaglesham on the art, and I actually own, I think, about 3, maybe 4, I'm not sure, at least 3 pages of original artwork from this miniseries. But I had never seen this cover right here. In fact, issue number 1 looks just like this, and I thought that's what this was, just a sketch cover variant, but it's not. This actually has the villains that we highlight in this series. You've got Catman and Deadshot, and who is it? Parademon. I can't remember. I think Savage. Randall Savage's daughter Vandal is on there. That's not who's on the original cover. It's the villains, the big villains, the Luthers of the world that are on the original cover, and this is an alternate to that. Well, it turns out there's no value on this as well. Although I personally like this. If I see Gail Simone again, I will have to take this to get signed. I've never seen Dale Eaglesham pop up in years now, since he worked on Fantastic Four and Captain America and Steve Rogers at Marvel. I have not even heard of him in years, or maybe some of the JSA too. But I've never seen him at a convention. Would love to take the whole series, and I definitely take this and those original art pages to all get signed at some point. But that's going to have to be, I'm going to keep that. That's a PC book for me all the way to get signed eventually at some point. Hard for me to pass up a Darwin Cook cover. This is Batman number 52 from the new 52. And another cover by for a possible signing is the Joker 80th anniversary book with a David Finch cover right there. And honestly, I thought that this one might have some value too. David Finch work is always fantastic. No value. Do not get that graded either. A couple books that I picked up. I'm not really a fan. I don't really read Star Wars in the comics, but I did pick up, because of the artist, you've got issue number 2 of Princess Leia, and number 3 right there. You've got Terry Dotson and Rachel Dotson artwork on that, and these are really nice. I thought I had seen an issue number 1 floating around at the show, and I wish I'd picked that up too, because I'd like to get issue. I probably will go back and find an issue number 1 of this now, in case Terry Dotson shows back up at Baltimore at some point. He was there last year, and I definitely got him to sign a couple things, but his wife Rachel was not there, and I kind of wanted her on these as well, because they worked together on a lot of the books that they worked together on. Okay, that didn't make any sense. Another cover that I bought was the last issue of X-Men Blue, but I bought it not so much, I didn't even realize it was the last issue of the series, which sometimes can be desirable, but this right here is a Mike Aldred cover, and I'm definitely saving this for the 2024 Heroes Con, where Mike Aldred is going to be the featured artist for the show. So I save that, and hopefully next year I'll be able to go to the Heroes Con and get that signed. I did pick up the first issue of the Young All-Stars, and this kind of goes right into that same Infinity Inc. world of some of the alternate, the JSA type characters and their offshoots. No value on this whatsoever as well. So goes into the PC. But here we go. Secret Origins number 31. There's some JSA love right there, starring the Justice Society. And of course, it's written by Roy Thomas. And speaking of Roy Thomas again, we've got issue number 33 in Infinity Inc. We were just talking about that. And issue number 31. And again, Todd McFarlane artwork, but not worth getting graded, unlike the ones in the previous episode. I mean, guys, this was a huge haul for me for a dollar show. I usually don't really care for these kind of shows because I really don't like having to dive and just spend all kinds of tons of time doing this. But when I gave myself that challenge of trying to find 25 books that we could basically get graded and resell, as I talked about in the last episode, it gave me a purpose to go around and look. And I know at a certain point I was getting tired. It was hot and it was sweaty in there, and the air conditioning was not working, and you've got a bunch of middle-aged guys all bending over boxes and digging, and the room was stinky and it was hot, but it was still kind of fun to find some things. Now, we're getting close to the end here, but one of the things that I've been talking about was throughout the last few months, I've been working on an Invaders run, which I'm getting very close to finishing now. But along the way, I have started doing a Defenders run, and I kind of was focusing only on the early Defenders, maybe the first 30 issues, but that's only if I can find really high-grade copies. So if I find high-grade in later issues, I'm definitely going to start getting them. And so I've been picking up some of the ones in under 100, but Defenders goes well past 100. In fact, I don't even know what the total numbers were for the series. I'm not even close to really starting on this. But I did find at a dealer a run of 3-digit issues, issue 101, and they had more than this. But I put them back when they hit spine ticks and defects that were not pressable and things like that. But I picked up 101, 118, you got 129 there. You've got 126. I was going to say, I'm looking at this and I'm going, that looks like Mike Zeck artwork. That's definitely one of these faces. I was looking there. It's definitely Mike Zeck. I picked up this. This is issue 113. 111. Here, I'm going to set these down. 110. And 109. They're all really good conditions. They're literally going to go into a box, but you know, I spent time looking up every one of these books. Every one that I bought in this show, as well as the previous episode, I looked up every one of those to see if there was any hidden value in any of these. Not enough to get graded for sure, but some of these are really good for as I said, for the PC, for working on runs and things like that, and for special projects. Now, the last thing that I did pick up, they had a bunch of them, and I think I should have spent about another couple minutes looking through all of them. I thought this was going to be a slightly better condition. It's a copy of Wizard Magazine, still in the poly bag, with a WildStar card right there. And you got the Jim Lee Wildcats cover right there. And they had a whole batch of those things for $1. And I'm sitting there, in my mind, I'm going, is there any value in this to get a magazine like this graded from CGC? I don't know. We'll take a flyer on it. It's $1. Let's try it out. The answer is no. No, this is definitely not one of the ones that you're going to get graded. Honestly, I didn't see any on there that were graded. So maybe there is value if you actually are the first one out there. I don't know. But guys, that is it. This was the haul. Plus, the rest of the comics were in the previous episode. I encourage you to go back and watch that episode as I take 25 books and I talk about getting them graded, hopefully getting those 9.8s. I mean, that's the premise of the show. And the books I picked out were all candidates for 9.8, or in a couple of cases, a little bit lower grade, but the value was still there. Every one of them was worth it, worth getting graded, and there was some surprising value in all of those. And there's still some in some of the ones right here, but not enough for the majority to actually proceed like that. You're better off on some of these just selling them raw, make a few bucks and move on if that's what you want to do, or just stick them into your PC and hold on to them. But either way, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Definitely leave me a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what you think of the episode. And if there are any good books in here that you would like, definitely just let me know as well, because I'd be more than happy to part with any of these at this point. They're great for the PC, but I bought them for a purpose, and that was mostly for that previous episode like we talked about. But a couple of them are definitely for the PC, that's for sure. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining me today. I will see you for the next episode. And remember, every comic has a story.